Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond with your host Robin Hayhurst. In this podcast, Robin will introduce guests that have known failure and want to share their story about how they got through it and what happened next. This will make you learn how to see things from a new perspective and avoid making the same mistakes. Please welcome Robin Hayhurst.
Hello everybody and welcome to Bust and Beyond podcast. I'm Robin Hayhurst and I'd just like to introduce our guest, Al Tepper, who is a marketing expert. Hello, Al.
Hello, Robin. Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, it's nice of you to make the time to come here. So Bust and Beyond, obviously, as we know, is about lessons learned really in business, on failure and in personal lives. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, a very young 51, spent all of my life in marketing, father to a near 18-year-old. I don't know how that happened. I mean, he was a baby 5 minutes ago, but he's 18 now. He's about to be. And I'm a massive American football fan as well, which is a bit random. So gives people a bit of flavour.
Well, we have a few listeners in America, so I'm sure that'll be relevant to them. So,
well, as long as they're not Chicago Bears fans, that's okay, because I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. So if you're a Bears fan, I just apologise. I can't apologise enough. But thank you for listening.
That's a Man City, Man United thing, is it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely, yes, indeed.
So you've been in marketing all your life. How did you come into marketing?
I always knew from a very young age, I had an aptitude test done by some career guidance person when I was 11. And they concluded that I was going to work with technology to help people. And it resonated and it made sense. And I always wanted to pursue a career leveraging technology in a way that helped people. I went to university in Canada, in Nova Scotia, which was incredible, and studied politics. And then went and did a master's degree at Stirling University in publishing. Would you believe? You can do a master's in publishing. And I came out and went straight into publishing. And it was such a natural fit for me because I was using technology to get information and knowledge to people to help them. So I really loved that. And I sat on the marketing side in publishing and events, basically. And I grew my career from there. And it's just been marketing ever since. I love everything about marketing. I love the idea of helping expert business owners stop being well-kept secrets. You know, my mother ran a business and was a well-kept secret. Nobody knew about her because nobody told her she needed to do any marketing. I mean, this was back in the 80s. You didn't do marketing then. You just put an advert in the Yellow Pages. You put an advert in a local paper, and that's what marketing basically was for most small businesses. And when she went out of business, it crushed her because she wanted to prove to the world she was more than a housewife. And she was more than a housewife, but the business failing really knocked her. And I just think anyone crazy enough to launch a business, because let's face it, to launch your own business, you've got to be crazy. You've got to want to take risks. You've got to want to do it your way. And if you're that kind of human, I think that's awesome. I don't want you to have to go back to a full-time job. I don't want to go back to a full-time job. So I want to make sure we can keep everyone who's escaped from full-time work to start their own business. We can keep them safe running their business because it's better for them. It's better for their community. It's better for the country because if they succeed, they'll employ more people. It's a no-brainer. And for me, marketing is at the core of that because if no one knows you exist, that seems like an awful shame, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, I think I look at social media, kind of the new marketing kind of environment, and you love it and hate it. It has such huge opportunity now that you never have got before. But at the same time, it's a horrible thing because you've got very few companies controlling what is really something that everyone relies on to get out there. And I think, as you say, adverts in newspapers don't really happen nowadays, or day-to-day ones. You know, if you even look at my industry, kind of development, they put a house onto a portal and one of the kind of big ones, Rightmove or anyone, advertises it, and that's about it. They might put some really top-end stuff in a magazine, but even that's quite rare.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of the story I heard recently about how you never see adverts for Rolls-Royce anywhere. And that's because the only place you'll see adverts for Rolls-Royce is at boat shows in Monaco. And a lot of the time we go where our markets are. And unfortunately, our markets are definitely on social. If you're in development, your markets are definitely on Rightmove and Zoopla. That's probably 99% of the reach, isn't it? But it's not very democratized. And as a result, I know lots of people in development who don't enjoy the fees of those platforms, but those platforms have a whip hand. With social, what I love about social, to be honest, Robin, is that it's free. Anyone can get into it. And if you've got personality and you can serve people and love them and demonstrate what you're good at and how you can help them, we see some fantastic random humans from around the world blowing up and being hugely famous because they added value. That's my kind of marketing. You know, I like it when everyone's got a fair chance. I think that's one of the lessons that we've got to get back to, is how do we make sure everyone has a fair crack of the whip without having to spend fortunes, because most people can't spend fortunes. Most people would never get to the place of spending 4 or 5 figures a month on marketing, let alone 6 figures. And so for most of us, social is just an absolute godsend, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. And I always look at social and you go, yeah, okay, I get approached by so many people over marketing and social stuff, and everyone's got the ideal scenario, the kind of shiny gold, silver bullet, whatever you want to call it. And I've learned from experience that a lot of people haven't got that. In fact, 99.99999% of them haven't got that. And I've always thought, maybe social media is about doing something that no one else does. Maybe it's about approaching it a completely different way. And then you kind of stick out. But it's risky. You can't do that and everyone go, yeah, that's stupid. But yeah, it gives an opportunity, but I think you need to really sit and think outside the box, because if you just do what everyone else does, you just end up being like everyone else.
Absolutely. And some great points there. The most important thing we can do on social media, and it's a guaranteed win every time, Robin. Guaranteed. Honestly, anyone listening to this, I guarantee what I'm about to say is 100% factually correct. The best way to stand out on social media is just be yourself. And there's no one else like you. You're completely unique. There's 8 billion of us walking around and breathing on this planet right now. No two of us are the same. We might look a bit similar. We might behave a bit similar, but we've all got different experiences, different senses of humor, different interests. And actually, fundamentally, personal brand is taking over. It's a very contentious thing to say, but personal brand is taking over from corporate brand. And for most small businesses, that's true, and it will be true forever, because we can't afford to compete with corporate brands. Corporate brands are spending outrageous amounts of money, and 99.999% of small businesses will never get that to that level. And so being yourself is free. Now, the next thing you said was, what if someone says, oh, that was silly? So it's the judgment. It's the fear of judgment that holds us back the most. And I deal with this day in and day out with clients not wanting to post stuff. What if somebody judges me? What if somebody disagrees with me? What if I get trolled? And my response to them always, all of those things are actually really good things. When someone disagrees with you, have a discussion about it, because that's how you get posts with 100 comments, right? When somebody has something to say that differs or corrects or adjusts. So we must get used to, and we mustn't people disagreeing with us. It's okay. It's perfectly normal for us to have different opinions. And it doesn't mean you're not an expert if someone disagrees with you. And it doesn't mean they're right either. It means let's have a discourse, let's have a discussion, and we can both walk away at the end disagreeing still. And the other thing around people unkindly shaming and things like that, if somebody comes at you on social being unkind, if someone came at me and said, bald, idiot, look at him, polished head, I mean, that's got nothing to do with me, is it? It says more about the person that says it. So again, when somebody says that, it's never happened in, how long have I been on social media? Probably nearly 25 years, a bit more if you count the early 90s when social media didn't look like social media today. The reality is it's never happened. No one's ever had a personal pop at me. And if they did, frankly, I'd be more likely to ask them, are you all right? Why would you say something like that on a public forum? And the last thing is, a troll is one of the greatest things that can ever happen. If anyone ever gets trolled, the advice I give to my clients is take a screen grab of the trolling, copy the URL where you're being trolled, the web link, copy that, and send it to everyone you know, send it to your entire mailing list, and say to them, I can't believe someone's having a go at me. If any of you feel like jumping in and supporting me, feel free. And what will happen, and by the way, this is the same thing if you get a bad comment. If you get a bad comment, don't try and send the boys round. Don't try and send a letter asking them to take it down. Relax. First of all, check, is it an actual customer? And respond to the comment. I'm sorry, John, I can't find you on our systems. Here's my personal mobile number. Please WhatsApp me, and I'd love to solve this problem for you, but I don't think you're talking about us. It doesn't make sense. If it's a genuine client, address the problem. And if it's a troll, tell all your mates and let everyone pile in and support you. It's a wonderful feeling when you realize actually people have got your back. So there's nothing to fear about social. The only thing to fear about social is be wary of the gurus who've made millions and are selling their program to you for £17 if you buy it in the next 3 seconds. Because I promise you all this, when I make millions, I will not be selling a cheap program for 70 quid. I will be in Monaco on a yacht relaxing. And so be very wary of what you see on social. Understand that there's an agenda. Someone's either trying to sell something or push an idea. And keep your wits about you. And don't believe everything you see, not even close. My God, 99% of it is
Well, that opens up
rubbish.
A few things for me. Obviously, you covered a lot of stuff in that. Firstly, going back to the bust and the beyond bit. I remember, I have had comments saying, well, why do you keep talking about going bust? I'm not really talking about going bust. I'm talking about what happened afterwards. It's beyond that interests me.
Nice.
That's first thing. But when that first happened to me, I think LinkedIn was in its early days, and I kind of went out on LinkedIn, and I would not put anything on LinkedIn. I was absolutely terrified that someone would go, oh yeah, but you've gone bust, or this, that, or the other. I am so over that now. I've moved on. I have a much more robust approach. I've been trolled by quite a few people. I don't know what I'm talking about, evidently. There's all kinds of... And I absolutely agree with you when you say, I actually kind of worry about the people that do the trolling. Have they got problems? Have they, you've got to look at people and go, why? Really? Is this all you can say? And often they've had failures in their own kind of life, and they're trying to kind of get out of that failure by emphasising someone else's failure.
It's distraction. Absolutely. That's exactly what they're doing. They're deflecting outwards because they don't want to look inwards. And you've gone through that.
I've often said, I've got 2 girls, very proud of them. They're doing really well in their own careers. And I've often said to them when they've had a problem or that someone's had a problem with them, I've said, well, they're jealous of you. And they went, what? Why would they be jealous of us? And I said, it doesn't matter. It can be completely fabricated, completely fake. They're jealous of you, and that's why they're being nasty to you. And if you understand that in someone, someone could be jealous of me because they think I am really good looking. Obviously, I know the truth. But if that's what they think and they're jealous of my looks, that's what they think. So you kind of get that.
Yeah.
You do get the funny side of the trolling where people kind of make sexual comments, particularly blokes, about you on social media. But
it's astonishing that people...
They're only human. What can I say?
They are, but I think people need, especially on LinkedIn, people need to remember it's not an anonymous platform, and what you say will stick forever. Yeah. And it's very difficult to build a good reputation. It's really easy to destroy one. It takes about a second and about 5 words of comment. And you said something really interesting there about people judging and critiquing. I do not give anyone power to judge me. The people who are allowed to judge me are the people who care about me. They don't need my permission. Anyone else who chooses to judge me without my permission, I read an awful lot around emotional growth, and there's a great writer, a great social scientist that a lot of people might have heard of, some might not have heard of, called Brené Brown. And she all about understanding the social science side of shame and where it comes from. And she basically says, and she quotes Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I haven't got the quote to hand, but it's a fantastic quote about only the people who are down in the mud, fighting alongside you, bleeding alongside you, have the right to judge. Anyone who's not in the arena fighting with you has no right to judge. So if someone's judging you and they've got no right to do so, I think it's more of a commentary about their mental health than mine. And I think it's more of a commentary about their professionalism versus mine.
It totally is. And I have a saying that I use. I don't know if anyone else has grabbed it as a saying that they came up with, but don't care about what someone thinks about you unless you care about them.
Yeah. An even nicer way, I heard this recently, people who judge you don't care, and people who care about you don't judge. It's spot on, isn't it? And once you get that, like after the bust bit, what you did, you reconcile stuff, and it's the and beyond bit, because that's the rest of your life. The bust bit is a slice, a period of time, but it's the and beyond bit that lasts forever. At the end of the day, you're not traveling with everyone. You get to choose who you journey with, and it's your journey. And once you get that, I watched this show last night. I can't fully say the title on here because it's got a swear word, but it's the subtle art of not giving an F, right? Everyone needs to watch that. You will not care about the stuff you care about right now. It's a phenomenal point. And it goes back to that point around who gets to judge you. And it's a very small group, isn't it? It's certainly not some random troll from Idaho who I've never met, who won't even use their real name. Most of the time, trolls are behind, they're just hiding behind, fake identities anyway.
They are. I mean, we were talking earlier, because we always have a chat before we do the podcast. And I was saying to you that when the company failed in 2015, it took me 2 years, I reckon, to actually learn something from that. For 2 years, I was blaming everybody. And I couldn't see what I could have done different, what could have changed. And that's a big deal. There's certain people that I feel were instrumental in us going bust, but I don't feel like that anymore. I got us in that situation. I kind of made the mistakes, and I gave them control of stuff they shouldn't have had control of. So it takes a while, and I meet a lot of people that, because of the podcast, which I love doing because I get to meet loads of people, who just freshly kind of failed, and they're still in the blame stage. They're still kind of blaming everyone else. And, well, my partner ran off with the money, or this, that, the other. And that's really interesting to me, because I wonder if they too will feel different about in 2 years' time, or if they'll carry on with that comfort food, that comforting thing that wasn't their fault.
Yeah, I think you've hit it there, right on the head there. It's frustrating in life when you meet people who could change but won't. It's frustrating when you realize sometimes that's you. Sometimes we're stubborn and we won't change, even though we know everything. We know what to do. We just miss that final piece. And it's very humbling to realize that you're totally in charge of everything in your world. The people in it, the way they treat you, the way they behave, what they do, their actions. Ultimately, you set the boundaries. And it's a fascinating thing in business when you start setting boundaries, when you take control of stuff. And when you realize when something's gone wrong and you unpack it, obviously, as you've been able to do, but that requires emotional maturity to do, let's face it. A lot of people are too easily triggered and they're just blame jockeys. They're just always going to blame everybody else. But until you can take personal responsibility for your universe and what's going on in it, you can't change it. Because as long as you blame other people, you're not affecting change. It's only when you bring it in-house and you say, right, I'm on this. What's my boundary on this? Right, no one else can ever have signing on whatever it is, whatever anyone could do. All we can do is learn. That's all we can do is learn. And so it's a bit of a tragedy when something major happens in your life, isn't it? And you don't learn, because I think that's a massive missed opportunity for growth. And look at the impact it's had on you and lots of people you would speak to. Some of them have taken it by the horns and turned it into something better and something that's more joyous for them. Running a massive business might be a thrill in many levels. Earning a fantastically huge salary might be a thrill on many levels. Having more money than you might be a thrill on many levels. But it's not perfect. I know plenty of wealthy people who are very unhappy. I know plenty of poor people who are very happy. We've got to be careful what we wish for.
Money is not kind of the answer.
No.
It's about kind of, I don't know, this is quite deep, but it's really about living each day as it comes and enjoying that day. And it's sunny outside. I went for a walk with my dog, the thing that chills me out this morning. And, it was a very warm morning. It was beautiful. And I could take a minute just to go, this is beautiful. Yeah. And how many people don't get that minute? They don't make that minute. They just go rush, 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 rush. I've got to make money. I've got to make money. I've got to make money.
And then they wonder why they're stressed.
Yeah.
Looking back on myself in that position, I was killing myself. I was working 12-hour days easily, 14-hour days, starting at 7, finishing at 9, starting at 7, finishing at, 1 in the morning, because I'm defined by my work and I'm defined by my success, right? And I'm defined by my wealth and how good my car is and how big my house is. No, I'm not. I'm defined by the state of my mental well-being more than anything else. And the reason I brought up everything around what we chase is because we get launched into the chase out of school. We're taught the chase in school and then we're launched into this chase. And at some point in our lives, everyone kind of looks around and goes, sorry, why am I doing this? Who's this for? Because it's not the path we'd all choose. And so in business, the first thing I say to any client is, do you love what you do? And if you don't love what you do, how are you going to market it? If you don't love it, how are you going to put the energy in it to sell it? No one's going to buy it because they're just going to see you barely showing up. So the first thing you've got to do is work out what bit you love the most. And let's focus in on that, because if you love something, it's really easy to advocate for it. And if you don't love something, it's boring. Can I go yet? It becomes a routine. So therefore, joy is at the core of business and marketing success for me.
I remember working in, I won't call it the corporate world. It was a very large house building company. And we were on their design and build side, which means we had a client. We had a client which was housing associations. Well, I used to leave my home at 4:30 in the morning because I was working quite a long way away. And I couldn't get there for 8 o'clock. There's no way, because of the traffic on the M25 was just ridiculous. So it means I arrived about 6:30. To miss the traffic on the way back, I used to leave about 7 o'clock at night. On more than one occasion, I worked through the night to get handovers and got really emotionally involved in all that. Looking back on it, I'm not going to name the company, but there was something dysfunctional about the company and the culture and everything else. It wasn't the right way to go about things. And I ended up, did I get sacked? I didn't get sacked. I refused to go back because they moved me to another site. It's a young lad, I don't know, in my 23, 24. But I worked out the forklift driver was earning more than me as well, because he was getting paid per an hour and I was getting paid a salary. And they actually said that I was getting a really good salary and I wasn't. It was, ridiculous. And the ethos of the company was, well, we've just sacked a site manager and we were paying him, I don't know, this is a long time ago, people. So, but we're paying him, 18, 19,000 and we just got someone back for 15,000, And they celebrated the fact they'd saved £4,000 on site manager. The fact the site manager is the key person in running, a construction company. You should be empowering your site managers. To put this in construction, and this podcast isn't just for people in construction, but to put it in construction phraseology, if I sent a bricklayer to build a wall without a trowel, which is the tool he uses to lay his bricks, how am I expecting to build the wall? If you send a site manager or a manager to manage people and they haven't got any teeth, haven't got any power, they can't stop payments, they can't get rid of people, how do you expect them to manage that's their tool? So, yeah. And this company is very much like that. Don't trust the site managers. We have a QS, he gets on with it. But what a dysfunctional company. And how much I learned from it? Huge amount. A huge amount. I learned how I didn't want to be.
It's funny, I was saying this to someone this week, you have to fail to succeed. Nobody gets lucky and wins first time. It doesn't happen. Not in the lottery and not in business. So that means you have to accept you're going to fail loads, from tiny amounts to large amounts. If I'm ever asked, whenever I speak to younger people, if I'm ever asked to speak to graduates or people like that, I always make that point. Please don't put the pressure on yourself to think everything's going to be a vertical line and perfect after today, after you graduate. The biggest reality shock is it's not even going to be remotely like that. The reality is that line is going to be all over the place. And we've all seen that line of, what business is meant to look like and what starting a business actually looks like. It's just this big squiggly line. And, you're going to fail. So start preparing to fail. Start getting ready to stand down your ego and learn from what's happening around you. And actually, there's a failure happening in my universe, not in one of my companies, anything I'm involved in, but in one of my clients. And it's a massive failure. And the sort of young lad who is the marketing manager there that I've been working with is worried he's going to lose his job, and he's got a young family. And I just said to him, this is happening around you. It's not happening to you. What I mean by that is it's nothing to do with you. So the most important thing you can do right now is pay attention and learn, because you're going to learn stuff from this that's going to stand you up for the rest of your life. And when we start to accept failure is not a bad thing. I know a very good friend of mine, Neil Giller, he regularly reminds people that if failure was something that humans were used to giving up on, babies would never learn to walk because they fall over 100 times before they figure it out. We are born to fail. That's how we learn. So why is it in business failure is such it's a dirty word? I don't get that.
I've got two takes on that. One is the embarrassment of failure, but actually there's another take on it, which actually, and when you look at business leaders that you look up to, Richard Branson, Alan Sugar, perhaps, I mean, if you do, whatever, I won't name any others. But anyway, if you look at them, you kind of think...
It's dangerous territory naming business leaders.
Yeah. If you look at them, actually, the lessons they've learned from failure perhaps are too valuable to talk about. There is that way of looking at it. They're such valuable lessons. And perhaps that's part of the reason people don't talk about it, because the value they've learned from failure. And definitely none of those people, Richard Branson, who everyone sees as huge success. I mean, he tried to take on Cola World and completely failed. Oh, yeah. So he does fail. And in fact...
he's had... Imagine how many failed businesses he's shut. More than all of us combined.
Well, my local train line used to be run by Virgin. And the government took it back because they didn't make success of it.
And didn't bother him.
No,
he
I'm
just
sure,
thought, what did we learn here? And
exactly. So what can we learn from that? They're still running. I think one of the lines is still Virgin, but I'm not sure. He's got a brand that everyone kind of feels is honest and is really good. His brand, though it's a kind of corporate brand, is backed by him as a person. So he's got the best of both worlds. He's got a corporate brand, so like Apple or something like that. But then people see him as the figurehead, and it's good branding.
He's a genuine genius because he's intuitive. He wasn't taught it. He learned from the ground up, and he's understood intuitively that who I am and what my business is inextricably linked. You can't separate them. And you get some great social CEOs, some great leaders who lead from the front, especially on social media. And there's always excuses and reasons. I'm too busy, or I can't figure out how to do it, or there's not enough time, or I don't know what to write. The difference is those social CEOs, they just solve those problems. And the rest of us get stuck in those problems. That's the only difference. They understand the value of it and they get on with it and do it. And the Virgin brand is a phenomenon. You could probably do an entire master's or PhD on the Virgin brand because it's just mind-blowing in its scope and it's led by a person. One of my favorite musicians ever was Virgin album #1, and that was Tubular Bells. A lot of people don't know that. So Richard Branson has Mike Oldfield to thank for a lot of his ongoing success because his first album was an absolute smash hit. again, it takes most people a lifetime to succeed if they ever get there. What do they say? It takes decades to become an overnight success. I love that saying. It's so true.
It does. And I think, lots of what Richard Branson, I read his books and I know a little bit about him. I also see him as a bit of a nutter sometimes, some of the things he does. But some of the statements he makes are really, really important. And one of the statements I really understand now is that so many people give up just as they're about to succeed. Because we see kind of the tipping over the edge, the tipping over the edge to success as being a knife point. It's not. It's a long plateau. It's a very long plateau. So you kind of get to doing the right things and you plateau. And if you're consistent with doing the right things and doing it, then you get kind of that success. But people are on that plateau. They're doing the right things and they're going, this isn't working. And that's the point that people give up. And so lots and lots and lots of people give up at that point.
Yeah. And there's a great book that talks about this exact point. It's called The Dip. And my brain is suddenly confused. It's either by Gary Vaynerchuk or Seth Godin, both phenomenal marketeers. And The Dip is all about when you should quit and when you shouldn't. Because there are times when you should quit. There are absolute times when you should stop doing something. And there are absolute times where you should push through. And the whole point of the book, it's quite a short book. It's quite an easy read or a listen. I tend to listen to books these days rather than read. But the whole point of it is that everyone hits the dip. After you launch something, launch is always really exciting and it's very dynamic. And everyone's excited for you and patting you on the back. And then you shut the door and everyone's gone home and the party's over and now the work needs to get done. And then you go into the doldrums because it's all work. There's no glamour anymore. The launch week has passed and now it's just pain and suffering. And most people quit in that dip. But every single 100% of the success stories that we see and talk about, they were the ones who pushed through the dip. And the reason why they succeeded is because 99.99999% of their competition quit. Not because they're exceptional, because they kept going. That's the point. Now, there is a time to quit. It's really important that you know when to quit. But also, you need to know when you're just making stuff up to convince yourself to quit. And there's another great guy that I advocate listening to his books, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, and his last book is Never Finished or Never Done. He's an extreme ultra marathon runner, qualified into the Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and the third service in America, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and whatever, the Army Rangers. He's the only man ever to qualify for all three. And so he's a tough guy. And, he says that when you're running, when you start to get that thought and feeling of, I can't do it. I'm exhausted. He said you're at about 8% there. Your brain gives up 10 times quicker than your body will. And the same is true in business. We just live in a world of stories that we're creating to protect ourselves. And a lot of the time, we're just going to make stuff up to justify the quit. And by the way, you're talking to an overweight guy who's made stuff up to quit more diets than you could ever imagine, right? So I'm speaking from harsh and vast experience here. If I'd have just pushed through once... If I'd have just pushed through once, I'd be a slimmer man today, wouldn't I? But I obviously didn't.
Me and you both. I have I have a terrible self-image, and I love what I do. So I'm that's given me the kind of push really to do something a bit more about my fitness, and because I need the energy.
Oh, absolutely.
But I've been talking about really poignant about people telling themselves stories, and they do. So I came across a business owner the other day, thought he was going bust, and I thought, okay, and he said, I don't think I can do your course because I haven't got any money and I'm going bust. I went, well, okay, let's have a chat. Let's have a chat about it and see how I can, help you. I can't take you on as a client, but I don't mind giving someone an hour if they're going through a bad time. So we had a chat, and his situation was he absolutely knew he had to get rid of half his staff. He didn't have enough work for all his staff, so he had to get rid of half his staff. And the story he told himself was that it was easier to go bust and get rid of everyone than to make that horrible decision of who goes and who doesn't go. And actually, his situation, he'd sorted out just as you quit, just as you're about to win. He'd sorted out the HMRC. He'd sorted out that he was on a good payment plan. He'd done really well getting to where he had got. Yeah. And actually, now was the time to get rid of the staff he didn't need and push through.
Wow.
And I told him that. And I don't know what he's done with it. I think the feedback I got was that he'd actually got rid of some people. But you've got to look at that and think about what stories people are telling themselves, because actually they're so scared of making a decision, of doing something outside their comfort zone. I've seen people often that I work with go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to design this business around this guy.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, right, that's fine. But I think we've decided that guy's not very good at his job. Yeah, but, I think he will improve. Well, how long's he working for you? Oh, 10 years. And has he improved over 10 years? No, not really. So you're designing your whole company structure around this guy who can't move up the company structure because he's not good enough, just so you don't have to either get rid of him or tell him that you pigeonholed him in a lower position.
People don't like conflict, do they? They don't like conflict.
They hate it.
Yeah.
They hate it. I understand that. I had to make those decisions and I was very slow in doing so. But it's the same thing with employing an accountant that you're working with, employing professionals you're working with, not understand they're not doing a good job. Well, then get rid, move on. Or
at least call it out and ask why.
Yeah.
At least ask what's going on. I love how you've jumped on the story thing, because I don't think enough people do. Right? But it's at the root of everything. Every time, I had a client yesterday who messaged me very angrily and said, I missed today's meeting. No one told me it was on. I'm really angry. And I said, okay, let's understand what's going on here. When I got to the bottom of it, they'd been working till 3 a.m. They'd been up at 7 a.m. They'd missed the meeting because they'd fallen asleep in their desk, but they were having a go at me. And when I called it out, they said, oh, I'm sorry, I've been a dickhead. Sorry for swearing. I hope that's not going to cause you any problem. He said, oh, I'm sorry, I've been a dickhead. And I said, it's all right. But it was obvious to me there was something else going on, because normally the first thing people say to me is, morning, Al, how are you? When somebody just sends you that WhatsApp that says, I'm really cross, when they just launch into it, it's not about you. It's about them. And there's a story going on and you've got to unpick it. This crosses really nicely into marketing, because if you don't know the stories going on in your future customers' heads, how on earth do you think you're going to resonate with them? You've got to work it out. That's the problem. That's the game you've got to play, the problem you've got to solve, the puzzle you've got to crack. What's going on in their heads? Because if you can understand what concerns them, what keeps them awake, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel bad, what their objectives are, what their challenges are, you can't do any of that until you've done it for yourself. So I spend a lot of my time, people have often called me, they've often said after a session, I feel like I've been in counselling, Al. And I go, well, it's a good thing, because if the best marketing comes from the deepest place, we've got to clear out all the rubbish in the way, haven't we?
I get a lot of comments about counselling. They say, I'm not a coach or a counsellor. Because people often, family companies, the way they relate to their wife, all this kind of stuff comes out in what we do. And that's really, really useful. But going back to your point, just reminds me of a really funny TikTok video where a woman comes into a shop with a bit of cheese that she says is mouldy or whatever. And the woman behind the counter goes, oh, we're awfully sorry, madam. I'll take that back, give you a refund, and we'll replace the cheese. And she stood there, and they stood there looking at each other. She said, do you want a row then? She went, yeah, if that's okay. So they then have this big row, and and says that she's never going to recommend them, and she's never going to use them again, all this kind of stuff, and they kind of finish the row, and then the customer goes, "Thank you for that, thank you."
Yeah, nice.
So
I'm convinced someone could make a fortune out of rent-a-row.
Yeah.
Professional arguing.
Yeah. I often see people who have a row who are cross because of other influencing factors, not for the situation. I think that's human nature. And I think you get rid of it, really.
Absolutely. We have to guard against it. I mean, it doesn't matter how much we learn, we all revert. We were talking about disc profiles earlier, and with disc profiles, there's your normal state, and then there's your non-normal state, your under pressure state. I don't know what it's called in disc, but there's that second version, that second profile of you. When you're under pressure, all of that good stuff's going to get out of the way, and you're going to revert to type, aren't you? And in our type, as humans, of course we're going to make mistakes, and of course we're going to tell ourselves little fibs to make us feel better, and of course all of this stuff is normal. It's not saying that we need to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it. It's like breathing, but you've got to own it, and you've got to guard on it, and you've got to put a boundary on it, and you've got to control it, because otherwise it controls you. Either you're in charge of your triggers or your triggers are in charge of you. And I don't think anyone's ever successfully run a business without mastering their triggers. I don't think you could.
Well, I think the triggers go back to the book regarding the chimp. Is it Chimpology?
Chimp paradox?
Chimp paradox, yeah. So we obviously have these triggers. They are stronger than us. Okay, so all we can do is we can manage them a little bit.
Yeah.
Or use them, And that's one of the reasons why I am not as fit as I'd like to be, because my chimp goes, you've had a hard day today. Treat yourself to a bottle of wine, and we'll have a nice steak, we'll do that tomorrow. And my chimp's really strong in that, So I've got to kind of
not just your chimp. I think everyone's chimp. I think everyone's got that chimp. Everyone listening to this definitely recognise that.
And I think
it's normal.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think also, when I've had a couple of glasses of rosé out in the sun, particularly when I'm out in the sun, you go, well, maybe I'll just have another couple of glasses of rosé. It's not that much, is it? And goes on like that. But I have learned that it's manageable. I have learned that I can go, yeah, no, okay, I won't do that. What I'll do is I'll do this instead. So it's close, so I'll have a glass of water now. Maybe I'll have another drink later. But I've got to be in a sound frame of mind to do that.
And I think this is why coaching has taken off, and this is why coaching is so powerful these days. And if anyone listening to this doesn't have a coach, the first question I would ask you is, why don't you have a coach? Because there's no Olympic athlete that ever won gold without a coach. Ever. There's no billionaire business person who ever ran their business without guidance, mentoring, coaching, advice, people around them, right? And so the thing is, when it comes to triggers, the reason coaches are so invaluable is because they can see the triggers before us. They can spot our BS before us. My people call me out all the time. And when I was younger, if you called me out, well, come on in, you'd put my back up. Now I'm like, no, call it out. Give it to me. Tell me all my BS. I want to know all of it. I want to know where it all is, because I'm not going to succeed until I figure out where all the potholes are. And even then, I'm still going to fail at some of them. And it's just about owning your response. It's just about owning your response to what's happening around you. There's a great book, Viktor Frankl wrote, Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a great book about what really is going on. And it's all about your response to stimulus around you. That's what defines winners and losers, people who survive and people who don't. And fundamentally, that comes down to you paying attention and being coachable. Because if you're paying attention and someone's spotting what's going on, everything's going to be a lot easier and everything gets better. I mean, my first 4 years in business, I had very little coaching. The last 4 years in business, I've got an army of people around me now. I invite, tell me, where am I screwing up? What am I doing wrong? Because I can't see it. I happen to be an American football coach, would you believe? It's a random thing in the UK. There's not many American football teams. There's quite a lot, actually, but at university level and then Sunday league. And when I've coached American football players, they're always better players than me. But it's not about that. Because whilst they're doing something, I can observe everything and I can then help them. They're using me as an external set of eyes to help spot their triggers, their problem points. And that's all we're talking about here. If you can't own that and get better at that, how do you possibly expect to succeed in business? You think you're just going to wing it? Doesn't happen. It's not possible.
I think going back to my journey, which this isn't really about, but I kind of entered into coaching to kind of give it some meat on the bone. I entered into doing a part-time degree many, many years ago when I was in my late 20s because I wanted to get a degree. I'd completely misread the fact that I was going to learn something. When I came to the degree, it was a game changer. I just thought, look how much I know. And the same thing with kind of coaching. Came into coaching thinking, right, okay, I quite enjoy this. I definitely have an ability to see through the kind of BS and work out what's happening because I'm not emotionally involved with the business. It's not difficult. I'm not saying that I'm not emotionally involved in the business or the people. So it's very easy for me to see what's happening. And I've got lots of experience in business. I've got experience of success and failure. Okay, this isn't about selling myself, by the way. This is just explaining honestly. But what I forgot was in every single company I've worked with, and that's now most probably coming up to 100, I've learned something. I've learned how to deliver a system better. I've learned what books I should be reading. I've learned how they respond to what I ask them to do. I've learned that people don't respond well to grasping the nettle too early. I've learned the way to put things in because I haven't done it as well as I should have with some of my early clients. And I forgot that I'd learned something from my client. I was all kind of like, well, I'm going to go and teach them how to do it. But, I have, and I've seen some really, really, really great successes. Was it down to me? I helped. I definitely helped. But the clients kind of took what I said and ran with it. That's the difference. Some people they fight it. They invest in coaching, they fight it. Because actually, going back to our early point about telling themselves a story, they have a story. They don't totally believe in the system. They don't believe that I can help them. They're trying, but they can't get to that next step. And I think that's really, really powerful. And those that do believe and do it and do put it in place and do the things that are outside their comfort zone. Like one of the things that really, really gets people is me asking them to review their staff on a regular basis, not for their wages, but just to review them. It's judgmental. They feel really uncomfortable about that. I have a real problem with getting people to do that. I'm still working on how to deliver that better so people do it, but it is a problem, and it's a really important part of running their business.
I think it's a great point to make. And I see that in me and I see that in lots of people I work around and with. Sometimes it's easier to maintain a lie that we tell ourselves, because at least it protects our ego, as opposed to accepting the truth, because that undermines our ego. And so sometimes, no, I know no, you're right, but no, you're wrong, because I've got to believe this, because if I don't believe this, then everything in my life falls apart, because that's the core of me. And I think it's the same thing, whether it's weight loss or marketing or business. At the end of the day, if you don't know the direction of travel, if you don't know where you're going, if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a goal, you're definitely not going to get there. Not because you haven't set the destination, but because there's going to be a million things to distract you and turn you off the path along the way. It's unbelievable how easy it is these days to be distracted from something. And you don't have to be ADHD to be easily distracted. We are receiving approximately 10,000 marketing messages a day. You know, when I drink from my Lucozade bottle and the Lucozade bottle passes, that's a marketing message that goes in your head, because there's a brand here, right? Everything we do and see. So distraction is the norm. And so you've got to have clinical clarity on your goals. And when I started in business, I was in a networking group and there was a business coach in there. And I had a few sessions with this business coach. And I ended it and I said, it's not you, it's me. I'm going to be honest. I know it's me, because I can tell I'm making stuff up to get you off my back so I can continue to believe my own BS. I'm just not ready for a coach yet. And what I did was I went and got emotional coaching and I got through all my BS. And now, oh my God, goals, accountability, I've got stuff over here. You can't do it any other way until you've got that vision and you can seat yourself in success and feel what it feels like. Then it's really easy to not have that extra glass of wine at night. Then it's really easy to say, no, let's not get a sugary dessert, because we've literally put ourselves in the place of where we want to go. And the same is true in business. I don't just mean have a dream about owning a Ferrari. I mean have an actual vision of what the business is going to look like, and defined around revenue, around goals, around targets, around methods, products, whatever, partners, whatever, and get somebody to hold you to account. And accountability doesn't mean telling you you're wrong and your ego is flawed. It doesn't mean anything about that. Accountability doesn't mean beating you up with a stick when you fall over. Accountability means when you fall over, I'm going to put my arm around you. I'm going to pick you up. You're going to stand up on your own after that. And we're going to talk about what went wrong and how you can do it better next time. But most people's view of accountability is a negative one. It's the same thing with failure. Accountability and failure are dirty words. They're the two most important concepts in human development.
I think people see accountability, and this is going to be non-PC, sorry for people out there, but it's the nagging wife. That's what people see it as. And it's so not that. But again,
you definitely might get a comment on that, but I mean, listen, it's a fair analogy. I don't think it's necessarily true today, but I think I get your point.
Okay, let's just clarify that the caricature of the nagging wife. Okay, so but going back on on your earlier point, I think knowing where you're going. I mean, I've been a bit of a fan of Tony Robbins for about 15 years, and he really has got some good points, but he's learned a way to put them that really resonate with people. And he says, if you want to buy a Ferrari, go out and get the brochure.
Yeah, go out and
work how much it's going to cost. Do more about it. If you want to build a company, build the company on paper. So this, I literally get my clients to do this. So 5 years' time, what company are you going to have? Is it going to be 5 companies? How do they interact with each other? Who's you going to employ? What's it going to cost to employ them? What positions are you going to have? What's the structure, the overall structure? What turnovers are you going to have? What kind of profit do you want to make? What are you going to make out of it? If you do that, the chances of you getting there, if you kind of then work out the steps to get there, are tripled, quadrupled. I mean, they are so. Whereas people just go, "Oh, I'm growing." Okay, so where are you growing to? Well, no, we're just getting really busy. Okay, so you don't know if your systems are scalable. You don't know. At some point you're going to come a cropper because you are going to be overwhelmed with work. And if you cut back on the work, go right, okay, don't get overwhelmed. I'm not going to take this work on. You're missing off opportunity. There's so much stuff people do wrong around that. And I think that is the crux of the advice that I start off with people. And it's kind of one of the first things to do with them. Let's see where they want to get. And not just you meet people go, well, I want to be an international company. I want to do this, this and the other. Okay. But that's what your company's going to do. What do you want? Because that's where we start.
Yeah. What's your vision?
Yeah. And you meet people who go, well, I'd really like to earn 50 grand a year. And I'm sitting back going, well, you're doing £1 million turnover already and you're aiming for 5 million and you want to earn 50 grand. Why are you going to 5 million? Or do you really not want to earn 50 grand? Do you want to earn 250 grand, but you don't know it yet? The language I use then has to be really careful, because I can't say no, you should be earning 250 grand, because it's not my dream. It's their dream. It's whatever they see it as. So it's a very difficult conversation when people aim too low.
Yes. I always think aiming too low is better than aiming too high, because you can always go up, but it's really hard to get them to go down.
I have the opposite view.
Really?
So strange enough, yeah. I think you're better off to aim too high and miss it a bit.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I believe in that from a targeting perspective. But when people first start out, if they're so often, as a marketeer, I need new clients urgently. Like when? Like now. Okay, well, we can start today, but there's a bit of a run up. There's a bit of a lead in. I'm not going to get you a client tomorrow. I'm pretty sure of that. And maybe not the day after either. It might take a bit of time. Oh, well, I'm really. And the problem is, most of the time, that's because they've started with such an outrageous target. And then they've completely failed to plan for it and failed to deliver it. And of course, they don't hit it. And so then they go into panic mode. I just think that when I meet, especially a smaller business, when they're playing a smaller game, it's easier to get them to play a bigger game. But I know what you mean. You've still got to aim. I mean, it was Oscar Wilde, I think, said, if you aim for the moon and miss, you'll still end up amongst the stars. And that's the point around the big goal. There's one thing I wanted to bring up that you said, because I can categorically prove to every single person listening to this that if they don't have a coach, they need one. And by the way, if you don't have a coach and you need one, and you're in construction, you might speak to this guy because he obviously knows what he's doing. But I'm not here to plug him. But the point is this: when we get in a car, if you're going somewhere you don't know, I don't know anyone that brings out an A to Z anymore. We've all got sat-nav, right, on our phones, most of us, I'm sure. So you plug in the address. That's the first thing. So you build your business plan. You define your business, right? And then you turn the engine on. Not that you do that anymore. You do this. You turn the engine on. I remember when you used to have to turn a key. You turn the engine on, and you start to drive. Now, in business, what happens is they don't put a destination in sat-nav. They just think they're going to wing it and get there somehow magically. The universe will guide them on the right path. And then the analogy that I think is important is they start driving and then they close their eyes because they don't think they need to pay attention anymore. I don't need to worry about this because we're just busy. We're busy. There's money coming in. Don't need to worry about it. It's the worst decision in the world. And you would never shut your eyes while you're driving, would you? So why on earth would you shut your eyes while you're driving your business? You need your eyes to be even more open, to be more aware. You need more telemetry. You need more data. You can't have enough. And I know it's overwhelming. Trust me, I was the most overwhelmed person in business in the history of the world. It's mostly why I have no hair now. I got a bit of alopecia. I was really stressed. And then I realized it was all for nothing. My dad had just passed away. My mom was dying of cancer. The world was on top of me. Money was tight. The missus and I were not getting on. Had a young baby. Oh, carnage, right? Absolute carnage. And then I realized it's all I was going to say a bad word there. It's all BS. It's all BS. It's all made up. It's all stuff in my head. None of it's real. None of it's real. All the stuff we worry about, none of it's real. Because if it's real, we do stuff about it. When we don't do stuff about stuff, it's because it's not on us. It's not immediate. It's not happening. Because we can push it off to tomorrow. The reason people don't lose weight is because they don't have to. It's because they haven't had to yet. You go to the cardiac ward and speak to every obese person who's just had a coronary. I bet they've got a real focus on losing weight now. And that's because it wasn't an immediate problem. When I was 25, being overweight wasn't an immediate problem, so I didn't solve it. And that's the truth of all of this. If you're doing something that you don't want to do, why are you still doing it? Who's forcing you? Is there a gun to your head? Are you obliged? Are you contracted? Or are you making a choice because it fits your narrative about you and your life? And if it fits your narrative about you and your life, plot that path. What sat-nav destination have you plugged in? Where is that taking you? And if you like that destination, crack on. If you don't, I would say pull over and reprogram the sat-nav, work out where you want to go, and then get someone to keep your eyes open for the whole journey so you can get there. Because otherwise, you're going to crash that car every time, aren't you?
I can already hear the story around that. Well, I've got no choice. I can't afford to. I haven't got time. I mean, I speak to hundreds of business owners about getting support and working with me. And I'd say the biggest one is I haven't got time. I'm too busy. I've got too much work on. And you just think, really? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So you have no time to work on the business. Sure. And the reason you're too busy is because you haven't got any systems in place. And all the things I could cure for you, you're too busy. And then I get to hear a lot of them. And I mean a lot. 6 months, 9 months later, phone them up. How's it going? Because I follow up. I'm really good at following up. Oh, we went bust. And this is the problem. And I've kind of really carefully, this is a plug. Okay, so this is a plug. I declare it's a plug. But I've very carefully thought out 3 programs I offer. And there's kind of one in fact, there's 4. There's a video course as well. If you need help, there's something for you. And that's the whole point, whatever size company you are. because I can't help everyone, but I want to help as many people as possible. And I am passionate about that. I really am passionate about it. It's not fake. It's so nice to walk away from a session with a company and go, yeah, I really feel that we've made a difference there. We've really kind of changed that mindset. We've changed it, and they're going to make it. They're going to really do well. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, that's the metric that I love the most. I don't measure a lot of things. I measure a lot of things in the business on the revenue end, but I don't measure a lot of things on the marketing end. I measure a couple of things that are really important to me. So how my clients feel about me is really important to me. I'm either helping or I'm not. And if I'm not, I've got a problem because I want to help. And the reality is that we're all good at making excuses. We're all good at making excuses. We're all terrible at being called out for those excuses. I was the busiest man in the world. Because I was busy, it meant I didn't have to help around the house. Sorry, honey, I'm really busy today. So I get out of the cleaning. Cool, right? I got away with parenting less because I was too busy. Can't change the nappy. I've got a call in 5 minutes, We make up excuses all day. It's how life works. Remember what I said earlier. If you're doing something, you must want to do it because otherwise you'd stop doing it. If there was a threat of violence to you, if you did it, you'd stop doing it. So what's the difference? And so it's all about maintaining this kind of self-belief. And I remember I had a process coach for a little while, and she said to me once, I want you to work 4 days a week. I don't think you should work 5 days a week in one. I said, what? I can't do that. There's too much to do. Are you mad? My reaction to it was like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? I need to work more, not less. And she said, no. Because what will happen, Al, is if you say, right, on Fridays I'm not going to work, what I want you to do is, and anyone watching this, check this out. Please work a 4-day week. Give yourself a 3-day weekend. You deserve it, trust me. And your family deserve it too. And what she said was, all the stuff you do during the week, if it's not critical, just bump it to Friday. If it's not critical, put it in your diary, just slide it over to Friday. And then when you get to Thursday night, look at your Friday and say to yourself, right, I've got a day off tomorrow, or I can do all that stuff that's really not important. And if it's really not important, take it out of your diary, put it in a to-do list and forget about it because it's not important, doesn't matter. But you've still got it in a list somewhere and then go and enjoy your Friday. Best advice I ever received, ever. I'm making more money than I've ever made and I'm working 4 days a week. That doesn't make sense until it does. And
it does.
If you think you haven't got enough time, you need to speak to this man even quicker.
I'm a great fan of a guy called Jeff Birch. He's semi-famous, but I think he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I came across him 15, 20 years ago. He just said, when you first leave your corporate company and you start doing your job kind of outside of that, you're going to wonder what to do with all your time. Because in a corporate company, you spend 50% of your time playing the politics, filling in the forms that don't need filling in, doing this, doing that. And it's so true.
CCing everyone into emails.
Yeah. And one of the things I work with my clients on is you're growing. Let's work the structure out so that we don't get politics going in. And let's not have stupid systems that are going to be long-winded and just box ticking exercises, which no one actually does. And it makes a huge difference. Al, we're actually... This is now the longest podcast I've ever recorded.
Wow.
So unless we take some stuff out, which, we won't be taking anything out, I definitely think we should do a part 2. Because it's been really interesting, really enjoyed it. So we'll give it a couple of months. We'll do a part 2. We'd love some feedback from anyone listening if they thought this was a useful podcast. But I always ask my guests at the end of the podcast to answer a question, really. And the question is, it's got 3 answers. What are the 3 things that you would advise a business owner to do to succeed?
Okay. I just intuitively wrote down the first 3 things I thought of there. I think the first thing is you have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, it's not going to be sustainable. Doesn't matter how much money it makes you. If you hate getting up and going to work in the morning, you're just going to find ways to get out of it. So I would encourage you to put joy into your daily life. You work very hard, make it joyous as you can. And by the way, that'll also radically overhaul your marketing because it'll be infectious. It's like when someone smiles, the smile naturally catches. So when you're in love with your business, other people will love what you do more. The second thing is measure and manage the only resource you have that truly matters. The only resource that truly matters is your time. It's all you have. And if you search for it on the internet, there's videos of end-of-life nursing talking about people's last words, and you'll always hear, I wish I'd have spent more time with my family. You'll never hear, oh, I wish I'd have stayed at the office and worked harder. When someone's on their deathbed, they never want to have worked harder. They want that time back. So own your time and manage your time. And the last thing, is have that vision, have that direction. Make sure you put the right thing into the sat nav, and make sure you keep your eyes open, and that you've got a trusted friend, someone to the right of you, observing and telling you where you're steering off the road or steering in the wrong direction. If you do those three things, I'm 99.999 certain that you're going to have a lovely life. I don't know how rich you'll be. I don't know how successful you'll be in business, but you'll be successful in life no matter what.
Well, thank you, Al, very much. And it's been really interesting. Like I said, we will organise, if you're up for it, a part 2.
Absolutely.
And we'll go from there. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Cheers, Robin.
Thanks for listening to Bust and Beyond with Robin Hayhurst. Be sure to tune in next time and visit his website at robinhayhurst.com.